I recall this one fall day when I was 8 years old and in Mrs. Smith's class. It was October 10th, 1960. I was a third grader at Morningside Elementary in Columbus, Georgia. Columbus is a military town, what with Fort Benning being located there. My family lived on Lynn Drive, about 2.5 miles from school. The school was located on Miller Road, not far from the Columbus Airport. It's since closed due to airport expansion. In time, the expansion of the airport doomed the elementary school. It was replaced by runway. On that fall day in 1960, all the kids at Morningside had walked out to stand beside the road in front of the school. Teachers passed out small American flags, and they told us to wave them when the motorcade passed by. I'm not sure how they knew a motorcade would pass by, but there we were with our flags in hand. After some waiting, the motorcade showed up, and it passed slowly by the assembled children. Bored from waiting, I had moved away from the rest of my classmates, and I was standing alone. When the motorcade appeared, I waved my flag back and forth energetically. The man in the back seat of the car looked at me and then waved. At the time, I had no idea who he was, but through his wave, he made a personal connection with me. I have never forgotten him. After that, I began to read anything and everything I could about John F. Kennedy. On that day in 1960, Kennedy had flown into the Columbus Airport to give a speech, and then the motorcade to Warm Springs, Georgia, where FDR had his little White House during his presidency. FDR came to soak in the Warm Springs. JFK came for the exposure. He gave speeches that day at both the airport and at Warm Springs. A few months later, I rejoiced at Kennedy's election. I celebrated his presidency, and I embraced him as my president. When President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas in 1963, I mourned his death. Other than for the death of my grandfather the year before, I think this may have been my first true sense of loss. Kennedy was my president, and now he was gone. I felt an affinity for him that I have never felt for another president. In the summer of 1962, my parents took our family to Washington, D.C., and while there, we toured the Kennedy White House. I had expected to see the president, but of course, that wasn't included in the tour. I returned to Washington in 1968. While there, I visited Kennedy's gravesite and stood in front of its eternal flame. The flame felt hot to me, and I was moved by it. I hope someday to take my son to visit JFK's gravesite. We'll warm ourselves with the heat of the eternal flame. I'd like for John to appreciate what Kennedy's wave meant to me when I was that little boy standing beside the road in Georgia so many years ago. In many ways, his wave led to my becoming a public servant and dedicating my life to working in the name of the people. That's what public servants do. They serve the people. That's what President Kennedy asked us to do once upon a time in Camelot when we were all younger and perhaps a bit naive.